So it's hard to imagine in the gaming landscape today that there was actually multiple fantastic first person shooter game series developed by multiple companies. I guess what I'm referring to is it wasn't simply just Call of Duty that took the top selling game every single year. And back in the day, there was the Medal of Honor game series. This kind of was a competitor to Call of Duty. This was owned by EA, and it actually had a pretty great run all the way up until the end, but we haven't seen this series in over 10 years now. So what's happening with Medal of Honor? What happened to it? And what may happen for the franchise in the future? So we'll start with some history about Medal of Honor. This was actually started by Steven Spielberg. He had the DreamWorks Interactive Game Development Studio, and after he filmed Saving Private Ryan, he wanted to create a game series that was educational and interactive and entertaining for people to kind of give a more hands-on approach, I guess, to some of the events in Saving Private Ryan. The first game, Medal of Honor, came out in 1999, developed by DreamWorks for the original PlayStation. It received a second game, Medal of Honor Underground, in 2000, also on the original PlayStation. And then from there, it kind of really, you saw a lot of releases for this game series. Steven Spielberg actually wrote the first three games, and we saw releases almost annually from 1999 to about 2007 across many different platforms. We ultimately saw releases of Medal of Honor, about 14 games and one VR release. Games were released on the PC, PlayStation 1, 2, and 3, Mac OS, Game Boy Advance, the PSP, the Wii, the original Xbox, the Xbox 360, and the Nintendo GameCube. They all saw releases of some various forms of Medal of Honor. So DreamWorks Interactive, they actually had a studio in LA, and EA actually purchased that studio outright. At the time, it was half owned by Microsoft, half owned by DreamWorks. EA renamed this to become EA LA, and this actually was one of my favorite EA studios. They developed so many great games as EA Los Angeles. Everything from Medal of Honor Frontline, I think that's a favorite game of a lot of people. They also developed GoldenEye Rogue Agent, which was a first-person shooter, GoldenEye, not the one that everyone loves from the N64, but kind of a reboot of this. I actually really enjoyed that game. They also made Lord of the Rings Battle from Middle-earth 1 and 2, some great RTS games. They were also the developers of just the pinnacle cult classic Command & Conquer 3 Tiberium Wars, as well as Command & Conquer Red Alert 3. So this studio just enjoyed a lot of releases that I really, really loved. They also made two great games, Medal of Honor Vanguard, that was on PS2 and Wii, and one of my favorite Medal of Honor games, Medal of Honor Airborne. This came out on PS3 and 360 in 2007. So after Medal of Honor Airborne, EA kind of wanted to rebrand Medal of Honor. I think they saw what was happening with Call of Duty. At the time, Call of Duty was also only doing World War II era games. And with COD 4 in 2007, they had pivoted to a modern setting. And I think EA saw the reception of that, and COD 4 is obviously one of the best FPS games of all time. And I think EA kind of wanted to replicate that with Medal of Honor. I think really where this kind of gets a little muddy is EA was enjoying great success with Battlefield at the same time as well, with Battlefield, the Bad Company series, as well as Battlefield 3 was all happening around this time, and that was in the modern setting. So for whatever reason, EA wanted to reboot Medal of Honor and bring it to a modern setting. To do that, they tasked EA Los Angeles, the same studio that had been making Medal of Honor games for a long time, but they renamed the studio to be called Danger Close Games, and they were going to be tasked with handling exclusively the Medal of Honor franchise. So the reboot was simply called Medal of Honor. It came out in 2010 on PC, Xbox 360, and PS3. It received generally positive reviews, kind of like the 7 to 8 out of 10 range, and it was a commercial success. And Danger Close developed the single-player component of this game, and actually DICE from Battlefield, they developed the multiplayer component. And I remember playing this when it came out, and if I remember right, it played very similar to Battlefield. And I purchased this recently on Steam, and I played it the first mission over again, and I actually thought, this is actually a pretty decent game here. So based on the success of Medal of Honor 2012, EA had a direct sequel to that game called Medal of Honor Warfighter. So this also came out for Xbox 360 and PS3, launched October 25th, 2012. It was apparently has a storyline that was written by real veterans and is inspired by true events in this story. However, the game has really poor reviews. This game, Medal of Honor Warfighter, was getting like the 4 to 5 out of 10, and the sales were not all that good as well. So based on the reception of this, EA just decided to shelve the entire series, and we have not really seen a release of Medal of Honor since then. Danger Close Games was effectively closed after the release of Medal of Honor Warfighter in 2013. EA shut down that studio, and a lot of those folks who worked at that studio went on to DICE LA. EA later claimed in 2013 that it has retired the Medal of Honor series from rotation due to the poor sales of Warfighter. But you also got to think this was a different EA back in the day where they were on just some sort of bizarre, inexplicable spree of just canceling everything that performed poorly. There were so many studios and so many franchises that EA just decided to lay out to pasture because if it failed one time or didn't reach these huge expectations one time, the whole thing was done for. And there's still a lot left over from EA that we have not seen since those days. I think Army of Two, another video I've done talking about a great game series I think people really enjoyed, vanished during this era as well. So that's kind of where Medal of Honor is today. Now, what's happening with Medal of Honor in the future? Well, thankfully, this IP isn't completely dead. There was a VR game released in 2020 by Respawn. Those are the folks that make Titanfall and Apex Legends, as well as the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game. So this was released in December 11th of 2020 for Oculus VR and Steam VR. And I'm not sure this is quite it, boss, because the game has received generally average to slightly poor ratings, somewhere around the 6 to 10 range. The game also has mixed reviews on Steam. So I guess the good news is that this game series has seen another entry, and Respawn Entertainment is, in my opinion, EA's best studio. However, it has poor reviews. So that is kind of the downside. So I worry that the poor reception critically, I guess, from this release may indicate that we won't see another release of this. I guess the good news with Medal of Honor Above and Beyond is that it returned back to its World War II roots instead of being a modern setting. All I really hope for is that this series can kind of continue and enjoy to reach the fans that it did. And I think maybe in the future, EA should look into see what really grabbed players' attention in the first place. And that was what Spielberg kind of set it up as, is something that was entertaining, but also educational, and really telling you the true stories that happened in World War II. And I think that's a great era for EA to kind of return back to. We don't really have any remastered collections or ports of these games, so they're all kind of stranded on their own platforms. On Steam, the only two Medal of Honor games I could find is Above and Beyond and the 2010 reboot. However, you can get Airborne on Xbox Series X and Xbox One through backwards compatibility. And I'm not sure if the original Xbox game is backwards compatible myself. I haven't tested that. So again, a lot of these games are stranded on their own platform. I hope that this game series returns. EA has claimed that it has sold over 39 million copies across all entries. So that is no small feat. So maybe we'll see something in the future. I'm going to pass the question on to you. What do you think happened to Medal of Honor? Do you think we'll see a return to this series? And what's your favorite Medal of Honor game? Like I said, mine is Airborne. I thought that was a fantastic entry, but I think everyone has their take on what their favorite Medal of Honor game is. If you enjoyed this video, well, then you'll probably really enjoy my video talking about what happened to Army of Two. another EA franchise that has inexplicably vanished in recent years. That's going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you, James.